Okay, I just had the 10,000 kilometer service done on this Royal Enfield Himalayan 450. I think I can give you an evidence-based assessment of its reliability. Just let me find a place to pull over and I'll talk you through all the pros and cons that I've found riding this bike for the last 8 months. But if you just want the answer on reliability, it's a thumbs up, okay? So thumbs up on reliability. If you want to skip off to watch somebody else's video now, that's up to you. Every bike is a compromise, unless you want to do one single thing with it. So you want to go touring, you get the best touring bike. You want to ride double track, single track, you get the best off-road bike. But if you want a bike that's going to do everything as a daily rider, then you got to get a bike with some compromises. The Himalayan 450 has some compromises. It's not the best at anything that it does, but it's competent at everything that I want it to do. Now that I've got 10,000 kilometers on it, I'm ready to talk about its reliability and the other pros and cons for the Himalayan 450. When I was considering this bike, I talked to a motorcycle mechanic who warned me against buying a Royal Enfield. He told me an anecdote about a friend who had had a very unreliable Royal Enfield, and then he said he wouldn't even work on one. But I did a lot of research and I discovered that Royal Enfield had really upped its game in terms of reliability and was searching for a foothold in the worldwide market, especially with this bike. So this bike was manufactured to high quality standards, and in my opinion, it can stand with any manufacturer's bikes. So let's take a look more closely. In 10,000 kilometers, I've never had a problem with the bike itself. Any issues that I've had have to do with accessories, and I'll talk about accessories later. All those problems were minor, and they wouldn't put me off the bike. But I have a warning for you about accessories when I get to the cons. One time I had the check engine light come on, and that worried me. But it was at the end of a long day on the Idaho BDR, and it was really hot. And so I think that might have just been an overheating issue, and I've heard of other riders who had similar things. The next morning, the light was off, and it hasn't come on again. So I'm not worried about that. And that was before the mechanic went through it on my 10,000 kilometer service. So there's no ongoing issue there. Another time on the BDR, I also had it die unexpectedly. Oh, that's bad. That was bad. And the reason I think that happened was it happened right after I'd had a fall and the bike had been lying on its side for a couple of minutes. And there may have been an air bubble in the gas line. A similar thing happened on the Gold River Roadbook Rally when a log was blocking the trail and we had to drag our bikes under. I was riding with another Himalayan 450 and he also had it unexpectedly die after we had picked our bikes up. But again, the problem was resolved fairly quickly without any lasting consequence. So I would say that had nothing to do with the bike and everything to do with the fact that these bikes are not made to be lying on their side. And I'll also mention the valve check. These valves are designed with shims that need to be changed from time to time as they break in. And that's normal for a bike that uses shims. So we have a valve check at 10,000 kilometers and at 20,000 kilometers. And then the next one's not till 40,000 kilometers. So it's normal for a bike to require some adjustment as it gets broken in. My Honda's had a screw type valve adjustment, and in those bikes you tend to get more adjustment when they're older rather than when they're younger. So reliability is definitely a pro for this bike. But let's also talk about the cost of ownership. The bike is not an expensive bike. I got it for relatively cheap, and there's not very many similar bikes that you can buy for less. I did all my own services for the 500 kilometer break-in service and the 5,000 kilometer service. Now, if you're not in North America, you don't have a 5,000 kilometer service on your owner's manual. That's only in North America. And the 5,000 kilometer service doesn't call for an oil change. But I did change it anyways, just because I'm that kind of guy who likes clean oil in his bike. So the cost of service has been minimal. I paid just under $500 Canadian for the 10,000 kilometer service. I bought a double oil change kit from Hitchcock's in England, which cost me about $80 Canadian. The bike averaged about 3.89 liters per 100 kilometers, which is about 60 miles per gallon in the US, or 72 miles per gallon in the UK. Sorry, Texas, the UK has bigger gallons. So I spent around $550 on gas. The gas consumption varies quite a lot depending on whether I'm riding at high speed on motorways or whether I'm just putting along at 80 kilometers an hour. So a minimum of 4 liters per 100 kilometers and a maximum of maybe 3 liters per 100 kilometers. So that gives me a total spent of about $1,150 on this bike, not counting any accessories I bought and not counting the insurance. By the way, in British Columbia, the insurance cutoff is at 400 cc's, so a KTM 390 would cost the same to insure as my old Honda 250, but this bike is in the category of 400 cc's to 750. So I could insure a Transalp for the same cost as this bike. Another plus for this is the seat height. The 17-inch rear tire keeps it lower. The seat at the higher setting is at 845 millimeters or 33 inches. Now that gives me lots of room. I'm 6'2" and I've got a little bit extra. Now I could flat foot my old Africa Twin, but I didn't have any extra room. Sometimes when you're backing up, and I can't show it here because I'm faced uphill, but having that extra space is good for pulling the bike back when you want to back up, for awkward turnarounds off-road, and a lot of parking spots are uneven and you have to back out of them. So a little bit of a slope in a supermarket parking can be a pain in the ass to get out of if you're on a tall bike and you don't have the extra leg room to be able to handle that. Let's talk about the power. At 40 horsepower, this is not a powerful bike, but it will do the job. I'm going to put power on the cons as well, but for daily riding, 40 is sufficient. I can ride on all local highways with enough power to overtake in the passing lanes. I rode up steep off-road tracks and I rarely wished for more. Admittedly, I like going fast on my BMW and feeling its powerful acceleration, but someday I'm probably going to get a big speeding ticket on that bike. It's less likely on the Himalayan, because I'm just having so much fun riding at a more reasonable speed and it's not pushing me to go faster. Since power is also on the cons, let's take a look at that. The only time I really felt like I needed more power was on a US interstate when I was trying to pass a semi-truck on a long uphill. And the bike was fully loaded and I just couldn't do it. I had to back off and let another truck pass. There's also many times on the highway when I felt like I was close to the limit and I would have liked more power. So if I was going to look for a bike that I was going to do some long touring on, this probably wouldn't be it. Fortunately, 80 kilometers an hour is the maximum speed on most of the roads that I ride regularly. So it's never an issue for me to not have enough power. One of the issues about buying accessories for a bike that's from a smaller manufacturer or is new to the market is that there's not very many accessories. So I've been buying stuff from India and England because the bike's been out longer there, and hopefully some Canadian suppliers will have more parts specifically for the Himalayan soon. But you can understand that in terms of the economics, accessory manufacturers don't rush to make accessories for less common bikes. Hitchcock's will send small things like the oil change kit by mail, which is quite inexpensive, but larger items it ships by courier, which tends to be more expensive. A lot of products that I've ordered from India, the shipping was included, but you can't return them unless you pay for the shipping, which can be expensive. So related to the accessories is the dealer network. Some of my commentators have mentioned that they don't want to buy a Royal Enfield because the dealers are not close to where they live. And for sure, there are more Honda and Yamaha dealers around. But for me, all dealers are at least 2 hours away. So the Royal Enfield dealer is right beside the BMW dealer and just around the corner from the Honda dealer. So that's not an issue. The issue is that the Honda dealer is Honda specific. So when I go into the parts guy there, he knows exactly the bike that I'm talking about, and he knows all the parts inside out. My local Royal Enfield dealer is big, and they also sell Triumph, Indian, CF Moto, Husqvarna, and Zero motorcycles. So when I went to the parts guy there, he didn't know what I needed for the oil change. That was kind of a disappointment. And I think what you're going to find with Royal Enfield dealers is that there's relatively few that have a lot of experience with this bike. Let's talk about the electronics on this bike. This is not so much a con as that it just doesn't contribute to the value of the bike. So for those of you who don't value electronics, then you can just ignore this section. The navigation is not particularly useful. I always forget to connect it to the bike before I start on a trip. The joystick is kind of glitchy. It's hard to get the joystick to work properly. That's a known issue. But since I've mounted the Garmin GPS on my bike, I don't use this navigation system. And I've also noticed that a lot of other manufacturers require an app if you want to sync with their bike. And so I don't know if that's particularly different from anybody else. You have to hit this switch to change it to turn the ABS off, and you just have to come to a full stop. That doesn't work when the bike is moving. Okay, the last con that I'm going to talk about is not really a con to me, but some people call it a deal breaker for this bike. The air filter is under the gas tank. But removing the gas tank, and I've done a video on that, only requires removing 3 bolts at the 3 bolts that are right under the seat here, and then the gas tank can prop up a little bit. You can reach under and disconnect the few connectors that are there. There's the gas line, obviously, and then there's 2 electronic connectors and 2 breathing hoses. And so all that can be done in just a few minutes. Once you've done it, it's a piece of cake. So people who are coming from dirt bikes who have to clean their air filter and change the oil after every ride, they think that's a big deal. But if you're more of an adventure rider, you're not riding in particularly dusty conditions, you're only going to do that every few thousand kilometers at best, and that's really not a problem. Okay, that's the 10,000 kilometer review on the Royal Enfield and its reliability. If you're interested in this bike, then why don't you subscribe to my channel? I'm going to continue to report on the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450. If I come up with any problems or have a warranty issue, I will certainly be making a video about it. For now, I'm just going to continue riding, and I'm going to head into the winter on this bike. I'm going to ride it year-round, and we'll see whether or not a bike build for the Himalayans can handle a Canadian winter. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.